Nobody tried this near me. Metafix. I don't know what episode number it is. I do too many of these. A conversation topic has spurred from my new show, The Meta Lab, as well as my time interviewing Jake Williams, former world champion, and in my interview with current world champion Patrick Joko. And it's with regards to the metagame and where you are and how it stands and where you are. This is one of those trickier episodes to do because I'm going to sound like I'm insulting your venue if you're the type of venue that I talk about. And I'm not. Everybody's free to run their venue however they feel like it. But the way you run your venue will affect the chances of players that you have at your store getting up to the level that the world champions have. Patrick Joko, who won this year, went to a lot of ROCs, went to a lot of different locations, and look where that got him. He got beat in Canada and won the Worlds. But one of the things I pointed out, I had to bother asking him is, I had to ask him, what was the strangest meta, what was the easiest meta, and what was the toughest meta for him to play against? And he actually had 3 completely different answers, and he explained them all. The way that you play with your locals definitely modifies your understanding of the greater metagame and how you are going to react in a different environment. Now, granted, the rules of Heroclix are 100% the same if you're running by the rulebook and you're running by the standards of WizKids sets for their tournament settings. So, 300-point modern in one area should be a 300-point modern in another. And if they're starting to add house rules, they're starting to affect your ability to understand what's going to be happening in the meta. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm pointing that out again. But what it is going to affect is how you play going into these other tournaments and what you're going to be used to running into. If you're running in a store that says you can't use an entity on a character, can you use a resource? Well, until WizKids says that, that's not the case. And your store is going to affect how you're going to understand how those things interact in a lot of cases. Which comes to the point that I've said 1,000 times, 100 times, you need to get practice games in. Not every game has to be in a tournament setting. You can have friends over at the table. When I refer to the table, it's the game that played at your kitchen table, on the coffee table, on the floor. I don't care where you play. But when I refer to a table game, it's a game where people come over to your place and just play the game. A lot of people just exclusively do that. And then what happens sometimes in those cases is sometimes the group of you misunderstand a rule or don't understand how a rule is affecting something. And when you go to a tournament and then you get the proper judging and the proper rules interpretation, then all of a sudden everything gets thrown up in the air by you and your interaction understanding completely flops. So getting a varied level of practice is a very, very good tool to have if you're going to be playing in a lot of high-level competitive tournaments. If you're going to the ROCs, play in a lot of different venues. And if you're planning on going to nationals or worlds, if you have the option to, we don't here in Canada, we unfortunately are limited in the number of ROCs that we have. We do have a few venues, which is fine. We have people come over to our place to play the game. Me and Amber practice with each other at risk of our marriage often. She's smiling at me, and I think there's a lawyer at the door right now. But it is important to understand that when you're going to play in the hyper-competitive tournaments, somebody might have more experience than you, and take the option, the chance when they trounce you to learn from what they did. Learn what they did was different. Figure out what kind of new things exist out there. But one of the strongest tools you can have in the sense of the game of Heroclix is a lot of varied experience. It's also good to have a group of players who don't really understand every intricacy of the rule. Because if you're that guy at the table who's been to a lot of tournaments, goes to a lot of tournaments, keeps track of the game, stays on the forums in HE Realms, you'll be repeating your rules often, but then they'll be driven into your head. Maybe not as well into your friend's head, but it'll be driven into your head well enough that you could just spat it off almost page page to paragraph of what's in the rulebook that describes that because it either burns you before or you've looked it up. In addition, I have to call this episode Knowledge is Power because HC Realms is a fantastic resource, don't get me wrong, for Heroclix knowledge. The way people talk to each other and discuss the rule intricacies is great. There's a lot of strategy talk on there. But when it comes to understanding rules intricacies, Amber's been spending a lot of time on it. At WizKids, they have their own rules forum. And the questions that are asked and are answered are publicly listed in the forum. So you'll be able to go through and read other people's questions. Sometimes somebody's already asked a question that you need the answer to, and it might be boom right there on the forums. So that's a good resource to have when you're fully understanding the game, because understanding the rules is almost as strong as understanding how figures interact with each other. But varied experience is almost just as powerful, if not even more, because if you understand every intricacy of the rule, that's going to make you a great judge. But what's going to make you a great player is a lot of experience playing the game, a lot of learning from other people playing the game, and getting comfortable with new strategies. War of Light's been doing it to me. I used to be the most uncomfortable with one-man armies and tent poles, and now you can't get me to stop it in War of Lights. If I see a Sodom Yat or a Weaponer Quard on my team or my packs, you're going to see a Sodom Yat and a Weaponer across the board from you if I'm sitting across the table from you. It's kind of that, the way it crumbles is getting a lot more games in gives you a lot more chances to practice the game and get a lot of play in. One of the things that Patrick also mentioned when he was talking to us was his venue, they play 3 games a week. A league game, the story event games, and the regular tournaments that they have. That's 3 games a week outside of his trips to the ROC, to Nationals, to Worlds. This is a guy who's getting a lot of practice. I mean, granted, it helps that he owns a store, so he gets to learn the rules while running a store and gets to use those rules in games when he's using on the outside. But varied experience is good experience. So, don't just go to your one venue, I guess I'm saying. Support all the venues out there. Find your locals. Mix it up every so often. Change judges sometimes if you have to. That's not a necessity. I know one of the greatest things about our venue at the Comic Warehouse, plug, is that the players there, we're not going to bash each other for, having I just realized I'm not wearing my shirt. How long were you going to let me go? I hate you so much right now. We're not going to bash each other for playing a hyper meta team. What we're going to turn to ourselves and say, that guy really wanted that prize this week. And if it's a team we haven't seen before, questions will be asked. We'll talk to each other about it. We'll look at what he did with his team that was different from what we were expecting altogether. So, that makes that venue great. But we have other venues in the area that play a little bit more casually. Probably won't see me play in them very often because I kind of prefer freedom of play. But there's also another one in Toronto that I often go to for major event tournaments. And they play very similar in a manner to Comic Warehouse, where, if you're there and you play hard, you wanted the prize that week, so that's cool. No bashing on you. I mean, we're all here to play. And, sometimes your experimental team works against a team that was expected to come in here and sledgehammer people in the head. Right? You never learn unless you experiment. So, experimentation, varying your play group, playing lots of games are the 3 keys that I could definitely suggest to anybody to, fully understand the intricacies of high-level meta play, to fully understand the intricacies of, how the game works, and, just so you understand how other people think. I mean, other people's thoughts are almost as good as yours, and sometimes you have something to add to the conversation. That's this week's MetaFix. I hope to see you guys this weekend in the Meta Lab, as we're bubbling up another guest, and we'll see who that is. We have kind of a new sponsor for this show. Majestics from down in Costa Mesa, California, run by 2014 World Champion Patrick Kajoko. He's graciously offered to help send us some support here at Heroclix, so we're offering some support by reminding people of the existence of the store. And you don't even have to live in Costa Mesa and even shop with them. They have their own eBay store, and they also have their own online store. So check down in the description below for a link to Majestic CCG, collectibles, cards, and games.